All right, let's dive right in. Today, we're talking about a skill that honestly can make or break a leader. Mastering your composure when everything is hitting the fan. How you handle those high stakes moments. Well, it can define your entire career. So think about it. What happens when a leader just loses it? We've all seen it happen, right? Maybe we've even been that person. A project goes sideways, a meeting gets tense, and boom, composure is out the window. But what's really going on in that moment? And what's the actual cost? That's the big question we're unpacking today. So here's our roadmap. First, we'll look at what we're calling the pressure test. Then we'll get into what happens when autopilot takes over. After that, we'll cover the high cost of reaction, introduce a solution called the SMART response, and finally, talk about making the shift from reactive to ready. Okay, section 1, the pressure test. And look, this isn't some exam you can study for. This is the everyday, in-the-trenches reality for anyone in a leadership position.
This is pretty much the job description, isn't it? It's not a matter of if you're going to face these situations, it's just a matter of when and how often. Whether it's a budget crisis, a tough conversation with a team member, or a deadline that feels impossible, these are the moments where leadership is really tested.
Now, this is where things get really interesting. When that pressure hits, something happens inside our brains, and it's something we've got to understand. Our autopilot kicks in. We need to unpack what's really driving us in those crucial moments. So these reactions, they aren't deliberate choices, not at all. They are deep, deep habits that fire off without us even thinking. You know, when stress spikes, the rational, problem-solving part of our brain kind of takes a back seat, and our more primal, instinctual brain grabs the steering wheel. It's looking for a shortcut, and that shortcut is always our oldest, most ingrained habit. And this slide just lays it out so perfectly. On one side, you have that autopilot mode. It's all instinct, all emotion, and totally focused on the immediate short-term threat. But on the other side, you have the pilot, the you that's in command. That's the version that is deliberate, objective, and strategic. The whole game is about shifting from being a passenger on that reactive autopilot to being the one who's actually flying the plane. Which brings us to a really critical part of all this, the consequences. Because letting that autopilot fly the plane isn't just a bad strategy, it can be incredibly dangerous for your leadership. And here's the domino effect. It all starts with your objectivity going right out the window. You're seeing everything through this lens of emotion and stress, and naturally, that leads to bad calls. And when your team sees you making emotional, inconsistent decisions, well, their trust in you starts to wear away. Before you know it, your professional credibility is taking a serious hit. That's a huge price to pay for a split-second reaction. Okay, so we've laid out the problem, and the stakes are clearly very high. But here's the good news. You are not stuck being a victim of your own brain's wiring. You can take back control. Let's talk about the solution. It's called the SMART response. This quote from our source material really gets to the heart of it. This isn't about just trying harder or wishing you were calmer. No, this is about learning actual, practical techniques. It's a skill. And just like any other skill, you can practice it, you can develop it, and you can get really good at overriding that autopilot. And that skill is the very foundation of what our source calls SMART leadership. And just to be clear, SMART here isn't an acronym for anything. It's just the idea of leading in a more intelligent, conscious, and aware way. It's the toolkit that lets you hit the pause button on that automatic reaction, so you can engage your thoughtful, strategic mind instead. So how do you actually do it? It really comes down to these 3 simple but incredibly powerful steps. Step 1 is just awareness. You have to learn to recognize the feeling of the autopilot kicking in. That knot in your stomach, that rush of heat to your face, that's your signal. Step 2 is the real game changer. Pause. Just for a second. That tiny little gap is where you reclaim your power. It could be as simple as taking a slow sip of water or asking someone to repeat the question. And that leads to step 3. In that space you've just created, you can choose a conscious response instead of just letting a reaction happen to you. So let's bring this all home. This whole journey is about making a fundamental shift, moving from being constantly reactive to being ready for whatever comes your way. And this right here is probably the biggest takeaway of all. Pressure is never going away. It's just a part of the job. The goal isn't to create a stress-free life. The goal is to master your response to the stress. True leadership isn't about avoiding the storm, it's about being the calm center within it. So I'll leave you with this final thought. The biggest source of pressure you will ever face isn't the situation itself. It's your reaction to it. It's that internal battle between the autopilot and the pilot, between habit and choice. And the most powerful thing to remember, every single time, that choice is yours to make.